Welcome to the Philos Project podcast. I'm your host, Dominique Hoffman, and this week we're going to be asking the question, where are the Christians? Historic Christian communities in the Middle East are vanishing. The ethnic cleansing of Christian communities across the region has changed the religious landscape. In Gaza, this is partly the result of the economy and the conflict, but it is undeniably made worse by life under Hamas as dhimmi or second-class citizens. Regionally, in 2010, Christians made up 6% of the population, and today that number is roughly 4%. Since 2010, the region has changed significantly with the Arab Spring, the terror of the Islamic State, or ISIS, and now the war in Gaza is once again realigning the region along religious lines. It is likely that by 2050, only 3.7% of the region's population will be Christian. And today, we're joined again by our crowd favorite, Hadiel Uwais, who's our research fellow here at the Philos Project and who grew up as a Christian in Syria and has a really unique perspective to bring to us. So, welcome, Hadiel.
Thank you, Dominique. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you for being back. So, I just want to start with a very kind of basic, broad question. Uh, what is it like being a Christian in the Middle East today? And then maybe you can share your experience growing up in the Middle East as a Christian.
Yes, so first, as for any minority group in the Middle East, it's very hard to live in these countries because of the political oppression, the social oppression, and of course, the religious oppression that many groups suffers from, not only the Christian. There is also the economic crisis in the Middle East today, which is making life hard for everyone in the region these days. And then there is the other layer of hardship that the indigenous Christians of the Middle East suffer from. And I'm saying the indigenous Christians because the only people who can say publicly that we are Christians in the region are the people who are originally Christians, not converted to Christianity. Because if you convert to Christianity, you'll be killed. It's not legal in the Arab laws to convert to Christianity in most of the majority of the Arab countries, and it's also traditionally it's not accepted because your family, your tribe will simply kill you if you say I converted to Christianity. I know that many people are converting, but not publicly. They can't talk about it. They either keep it under the ground. They don't practice their Christian faith publicly, or they travel and they leave the region and announce their conversion to Christianity. So it's very hard. Even those who are the survivors of many massacres that took place against the indigenous Christians in the region, it's hard for them to stay there. And the numbers are telling us how hard it is, because the numbers of the Christians in the region are dwindling dramatically, from Syria to Iraq to even Lebanon. Lebanon that always enjoyed the special status for Christians who were controlling the political scene in Lebanon. Their numbers now are decreasing. It is hard because of the all sorts of oppression, because there is no freedom of expression, because in most of the Arab countries, Christians can't be president, but not only can be a president, can't be appointed in any significant decision making positions. And this is what's leading to very unfair laws for the Christians, let alone the emergence of ISIS, which led to the departure of hundreds of thousands of Christians from the region.
Hmm. You mentioned ISIS, so maybe we could start there. Can you speak about the persecution of Christians and the scope of that and the brutality of that by the Islamic State? And what motivated that ideology? And how did the systematic mass murder of Christian minorities affect the region today? How is that still felt in the region?
The Islamic State in Iraq and Sham emerged in mainly in eastern Syria and Iraq. Eastern Syria is my homeland, the region that I came from, and there is a significant numbers of Christians in eastern Syria and Iraq where ISIS emerged. And ISIS is, of course, an accumulation for long an old ideological hate and hate speech and hateful ideas against the Christians, against Jews, against anyone who is different in the region. But it emerged in this ugly face of ISIS, and the first thing ISIS did was capturing all the Christians in the region. They killed hundreds of them. The majority of the Christians managed to escape the region before ISIS take control of the entire eastern Syria and Iraq. So uh, I know many people that I knew from my childhood who were beheaded. Their fathers were beheaded by ISIS. There is this man that I know very well. He had a shop in our neighborhood, and he belongs to the Chaldean Catholic Church. And he was beheaded by ISIS for no reason, just for being a Christian. His family managed to flee eastern Syria. Many of the Christian women were enslaved by ISIS, and that was a very significant turning point for the presence of Christianity in eastern Syria and Iraq. From my family, the entire family is, as I mentioned before, we are indigenous Christians. The entire family left eastern Syria. We had no people, we had no immigrants before 2013, but now the entire family is in Europe or here in the United States. Almost 40 people from the big family, including my uncles and cousins and aunts and all of that, they left eastern Syria after 2013. And that can tell how much small is the Christian community today is in eastern Syria.
Hmm. And can you talk about just the connection to the land and what that means for your family? And is there a desire to return? And why wouldn't your family be able to return even if they wanted to?
The connection to the Middle East is very important. It's very important to the Christians as much as the Jews. It means a lot for us. It is our homeland. It is the birth of Christianity. Was what took place in that region. So it means a lot for us. For of course the older generation, it's heartbreaking for them to leave now to continue the rest of their lives in Sweden or in Germany or here in the United States. They loved Syria, they loved Iraq, they wanted to stay there. It means everything for them. Like for example, my city Hasaka in eastern Syria, it was built on the hands of Syriac Orthodox Christian, the group that I belong to. They are the first people who came from Turkey to eastern Syria, and the reason they came from Turkey to eastern Syria, from southern Turkey to eastern Syria in the 1920s, is because they were targeted also by Islamist ideologues, by tribes, by Kurdish tribes supported by the Ottoman Empire, who committed also massacres against the Christians. And of course, the biggest genocide was targeted the Armenians in southern Turkey back then. But what many people don't really know, that many other groups of Christians like this, the Assyrians, the Syriac Orthodox, also were killed by the Ottomans in the 1920s, and that led many of the survivors of these genocides to flee Turkey to Syria. And when they came to Syria, they came to Hasake. Hasake is just few kilometers away from where the Armenian genocide took place, and they started to build a life there. and this is how this city emerged. It was just a desert, and it was built on the hands of these people that were forced to flee their homeland after the emergence of ISIS.
Hmm. And could you speak to what's happening now in Gaza as well? Because you have historic Christians in Gaza. Do you know a lot about the Christian communities in Gaza, and how did their life change under Hamas's rule from before Hamas took control?
Yes, so here in the Washington D.C. area where I live today, I attend an Anatokian Orthodox church in the Potomac area near Washington D.C. And the attendants of this church are Anatokian Christians from all over the place, immigrants from Lebanon, from the West Bank, from Gaza, from Syria, and I hear their stories. I hear their suffering, and they didn't leave the West Bank or Gaza just after the recent war or the recent wars between Israel and Hamas. They started to leave a long time ago, and their numbers also are decreasing dramatically because of many sorts of suffering. All what we hear today in the media is that Israel is targeting church, Israel is targeting the Christian community, but nobody asks why the Christians in Gaza, who were controlled by Hamas only, not by Israel, traveled in the first place, fled Gaza in the first place, preferred to leave their historic lands rather than staying in it under the control of Hamas. And the reason is obvious. They couldn't tolerate Hamas's rule in Gaza. They even many of them couldn't tolerate the rule of the Palestinian Authority in some parts of the West Bank.
Hmm. And could you speak about the dhimmi status of Christians? It's my understanding that's a legacy of even the Ottoman Empire, which is Christians as second class citizens. You even talked about the legacy of Ottoman persecution throughout the region. What does that second class citizenship look like today? And is that only happening in Gaza, or is that reflected across the region?
Unfortunately, it is reflected all across the region, and it is there. It is in the constitutions of these countries. Christians can't be a president in Syria. We can't have a Christian president. Same for Iraq. Same for most, like not only most of all the countries in the region. Unfortunately, so to have something like this discriminating against Christians in the constitution is is very unfair, and it reflects on uh, everything in our lives. In there we are according to the constitution, we are a second class citizens. We can't be involved in the political life effectively. Of course, you could see sometimes Christian ministers here or there, but those Christian ministers, those people who belongs to Christian families, are in power in Syria or Iraq. They are in power, unfortunately, because they are close to the government. They are there just to say that we have a certain quota, we have a certain margin of involvement for the Christians in the government, but there is nothing real. We hear, like, even now in the Palestinian Authority, or in the organizations that represents the Palestinian issue here in the United States, or back home, you see many Christian leaders, you see many Christian politicians who are involved in the decision making of these political circles. But unfortunately, these people are not necessarily representing the Christians, the real suffering of the Christians, the real voices of the Christians. They represent the voices of the governments that they work for. And once they start to talk about Christian rights, once they start to ask for a real equality between Christians and Muslims in their communities, they are ousted, and they can't be in any serious position anymore.
Well, Hadil, thank you for shedding light on this. And your story is both so heartbreaking and also inspiring. And so thank you for sharing the story of your family. You're going to be speaking in a webinar on the status of Christians as dhimmi in the region, alongside Andrew and Simone, who are both at the Philos Project. And so I just wanted to plug that webinar. You'll be able to find it on YouTube, and we'll be able to hear you expand on some of these concepts a little bit more there. Hadil, where can our audience follow you on your social media?
The best place to follow me is Twitter at Hadil Uwais.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Hadil, and I will see everyone next week.
Thank you, Dominique. Bye bye.